It is my absolute privilege and pleasure to introduce to you our keynote speaker at our conference, Inspired Are You Future Ready? His Royal Highness Tunku Zain Al-Abidin. He is the founding president of the Institute for Democracy and Economic Affairs, which is popularly known as IDEAS. Tunku is also a board member and director to various foundations and companies, including the Jeffrey Chow Foundation and the Genovasi Foundation, where I met him the first time. He's also an advisor or patron to various educational and musical organizations. He's a well-known speaker, an author, and even a columnist across 3 newspapers. Tunku was educated at Alice Smith School in Malaysia, Marlborough College, and then went on to get his master's degree, his MSc in comparative politics from the London School of Economics and Political Science. He worked in the UK Houses of Parliament, the World Bank, the United Nations Development Program, and various other institutions before returning to Malaysia. As an Eisenhower Fellow, he's been selected for various leadership programs and speaking tours by the governments of Australia, France, the European Union, Singapore, Canada, and Cuba. And he has received awards for integrity and impact amongst young leaders. As a keen pianist, Tunku has also performed or recorded with the Malaysian Philharmonic Orchestra and the UITM Chambers. We are so happy to ask him now to deliver his keynote speech.
So hello everyone, and welcome to this Inspired Are You Future Ready conference. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you to Wright International and to El-Marie for inviting me to address you in this brief opening keynote today. I've looked at some of the speakers and the organizations they represent. They're really spectacular, and they really represent the best of innovation and entrepreneurship and sustainability within and of the education sector. Now, I'm not an educator myself, but I wear a number of different hats, which I think have given me some perspective into the evolution and the transformation of education here in Malaysia. I mean, for example, I've seen how my old school has had to really significantly expand its facilities and its different offerings just to remain competitive in a burgeoning private education market at the secondary level. I'm a trustee of a foundation that owns one of the largest education groups in Malaysia, and I really begin to understand how, just how large this is, just how big the appetite for innovation is, and just how, well, demanding parents and students can be. Through some of my sports and musical associations, I've also welcomed a shift, I think, in the last decade, away from that traditional obsession, especially in Malaysia, that science is the most important aspect of education, and now it's really nice to see more and more children doing sport, doing music, forming orchestras, and that's something which I welcome, being involved in a number of sporting and musical bodies in Malaysia. And one of my most memorable occasions over the last few years was going to a rural school in Perak, which is sort of towards the north of Malaysia, and teaching music to a group of students who, might, under different thinking, would never have even seen or touched a musical instrument before. And I think this is augmented as well by a fellowship that I have in one of the public universities with a very vibrant music faculty. And I have to say, I'm very proud because these are children, again, who didn't grow up with that much access to music, and they're now winning choral, very serious choral competitions in Rome, and they are really coming out in the pop and rock scene and jazz scene here in Malaysia as well. I'm also a director of a small college that is offering diplomas and degree pathways. I think that's a very interesting space as well. I've seen how young people from across Southeast Asia, from China, the Middle East, and Africa are really looking towards Malaysia for high quality and affordable qualifications that will enable them to have a better life in their home countries, or indeed to work in Malaysia and support their families back home or create new families here. So that's a very, very interesting space as well. Now, speaking about the movement of people, obviously not everyone is able to access these opportunities in the same way. I'm involved in a couple of foundations that look specifically at the issue of refugee and stateless children. And I'm involved in initiatives that are seeking to educate these children. And in recent times, with the movement restrictions from COVID, and I have to say, some degree of xenophobia and hate-mongering, I've really seen how negative rhetoric against stateless and refugee communities is really impacting the livelihoods, particularly of these children who already began before COVID with limited opportunities. One thing I paid specific attention to is civic and citizenship education. I think it's very important that, particularly in this age of social media, where there is a lot of distrust of institutions, where there is a lot of hate mongering and fear mongering of the other, the xenophobia, the racism, and as well this pressure to conform to causes, right? I mean, I think we've all seen it in terms of some of these protest movements in the last few years. If you are not sufficiently on board with a particular movement, then you are evil, and I'm going to cast you out from my friend list. I don't think that's healthy. I think we need to learn how to engage with each other when we have disagreements. And to me, the most important aspect of that, beyond the good manners and communication skills that I mentioned earlier, it's also about institutions, right? It's understanding that as citizens, you have institutions that exist to moderate people who disagree with each other. And that is, of course, the basis of democracy. And so that's why from a young age, I would teach people, why we have things like government or parliament, and what is the role of the judiciary? Why do we have federal, state, and local government? What's the difference? I think if citizens grow up with a greater understanding of these concepts, then when they become adults and they are working and they're paying taxes and they're looking for jobs and they are looking for housing, they will be able to better engage with those different institutions, instead of sometimes what we see now is a general anger and even violence that is not particularly intelligently targeted. By the same token, the Institute for Democracy and Economic Affairs has a special project that looks at providing education for children on the autism spectrum. And that's something that I'm very proud of, because we have great feedback from parents. These are children who are on the autism spectrum who come to, and this is a primary level, and we have so many cases where they go on, they become mainstreamed into the secondary school system, and they thrive in these secondary government schools. Recently, I've become more involved in a company that provides upskilling and reskilling for people affected by by COVID. Of course, unemployment is up, but there's always been a sort of acknowledgement that there are many graduates in Malaysia who have their degrees but find it difficult to enter the job market because of a lack of skills. And one very common conversation I have with employers is that, oh, we have to spend another 3 to 6 months training these graduates just so that they can start working with us. So that's something I'm involved in, looking specifically at skills. And I think that's a wonderful segue into my involvement with right education, because I'm a trustee of another foundation, the Genovasi Foundation, which together with the Innovation Agency of Malaysia has begun this remarkable pilot program in Malaysia in a number of schools, and these are all government schools. These are not the creme de la creme of schools. These are what you might term as, the standard schools that are representative of most schools in Malaysia. And what we've done, these three entities, the Genovasi Foundation, the National Innovation Agency, together with Right Education, we've come up with this program called the Genosis Program, which aims to ensure that young people in Malaysia are holistic individuals. They're ready to be global citizens. They have the skills to interact digitally, but also with confidence, with discipline, and with a wider appreciation of their environment in their day-to-day lives. So it's a comprehensive program that looks at skills, that looks at characteristics, that looks at all the attributes that are relevant in the 21st century. And what I particularly like about it is that at every step of the way, it has the Sustainable Development Goals in mind. So I'm very proud to be part of that. And I've seen the Genosis program in action in a school in my state. And the feedback from the teachers and the students is remarkable. I think the teachers really see how the pedagogy and the content really increases the engagement with the pupils. And it's not a revamp of the whole curriculum. The content is still based on the standard Malaysian curriculum. It's the method of teaching that is innovative. It's the way the classroom chemistry works that is innovative. And I really that it is a palpable feeling when you're in the classroom and you're seeing these things in action. And of course, I didn't just speak to the teachers, I spoke to the students as well. And I think, there is a sort of cultural element. Sometimes you get kids who are shy and they're not going to be willingly conversing, but this sort of collaborative format really brings that out. And let's face it, regardless of how digital we're going to be, I think the basic communication skills, the ability to converse with people from various different backgrounds, and learning how to disagree with people in a calm and collected and considered way is a particularly important skill in the age of social media, where sometimes you have keyboard warriors who are going to deliberately stoke hate and anger. So that's the Genosis program. And I suppose that sort of rounds off the various different ways in which I'm involved in the education scene in Malaysia. I am looking forward to learning from all of you over the next few days on the expert subjects that you represent. And the great thing about this conference is that it is sustainable. We are not flying or even driving to get to the venue. The content is available for the next 365 days. So let's make the most of that. And I suppose that's it. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you very much.